which makes you proud, and then being proud to have to bother you. Now I'll tell you what you do. And I never known, and I'll bet you would have known, Mr. Reba.
Okay, how do we do it, Mr.
I
Treasurer?
would like to introduce Dr. Lenz, who is a senior researcher in the Center for Education and Human Services at SRI International. He has over 30 years of experience in conceptualizing and developing innovative research, development, and training products to improve instruction and outlook for secondary students. He has authored numerous books, teaching manuals, and articles. He is also my uncle. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Lenz.
Now, you know that I sent him 40 pages of background information about me. I share with you. He chose not to do that. So you can thank him for that short introduction. Now, one of the things that I want you to know, though, is that over the past 30 years, I've gotten about $25 million worth of grant funding. However, the other side of that is I have, speak close to the mic, I have submitted over $300 million, of which I didn't get funded. So the game of research is one, is a big crapshoot. You submit lots of proposals with lots of ideas, and once in a while, you will strike it. Now, part of that is because they have different reviewers, with different values, with different research skills, with different biases, with different perspectives, with different ways of looking at whether it is good research, bad research, qualitative research, quantitative research, the number of subjects you're studying, the design that you use. And so I am considered a very low funded researcher compared to some people who've gotten $300 million per year. What I'm here to talk to you about is really research that I'm doing right now. I'm at the University of Kansas, so a senior researcher there. Now I'm just down the block at SRI International. And I want to tell you a little bit about SRI International, about what we do, what I do, and then I'm going to engage you in a conversation about learning technology. Now, one of the things that I've learned is that you know more than me about technology. You know more than 95% of the teachers out there about technology. You use it, you live it, you pick it up, it's easy for you. For me to go and introduce some technology to a group of teachers is like moving Mount Rushmore. Getting schools to invest in the infrastructure for technology is really difficult. And so, part of the mission that we have is to change the culture of education to adopt technology, for teachers to become proficient in technology, to embrace a let's learn together approach to technology, be more collaborative in learning from you about technology, and to leverage what you bring to school about all of that technology that you use just very easily. So, now I'm going to see if I can get a presentation to a video here. You know more about it. One of the things I want to do is I don't like this to be all about PowerPoints. So I did a lot. I'm going to just go through and talk to you about some of what SRI does. SRI has been around here forever. It was considered the hardest Silicon Valley before Apple, before Google. It was before most of the tech companies that you are familiar with, but yet you probably not heard of SRI International. Going to talk a little bit about what it does, 65 years of history, and then I'll move on to solutions to problems in education, because that's what SRI is all about, innovation. And it's innovation in a variety of fields. One of the things that SRI is best known for is external independent evaluation. Why do you need external independent evaluation for products or services? They're not biased. If you develop something and you are the one doing the studies to prove that it works, what's to say that you didn't, in your studies, add bias, maybe unwittingly, in the interpretation of your data, your design? So, they hire companies like SRI do evaluations that are independent with their own statisticians, their own design experts. They conduct the studies separate from the developer. Now they will go to the developer and they will ask, do these measures adequately evaluate your product? Are these the things that are important to you? If we use your product, will these be the outcomes and will these things measure them? So we confirm with the developers what it is they value and what it is their products or services are supposed to do. And then we ask this question. If this measure gives us 50 points, what is the cut score that you say needs to be there for you to say that this product, your product, did its job? If it's 50 points, would it be 40? Would it be 35? May not be 50, but what would be the point at which it would earn enough points to make people happy? And you know most developers can't tell you that. You have to almost do studies to figure out that cut point on which it's effective. Right? So part of our work is to work with developers to figure these things out. So that group of people is down the street. There are, we've been here 67 years. Very disciplined, very systematic. It's an old army base. You would see Quonset huts, the hospital, part of Stanford University at one time. In fact, SRI stands for Stanford Research Institute International. But then, a number of years ago, it became a nonprofit separate from Stanford. So SRI doesn't stand for anything anymore. It's SRI. So, a little bit of history. It recently acquired the Startup Labs, revenue and the number of employees. But what I think is most important about it is the culture that SRI has established. It's all about innovation. And what is an innovation? How would you define innovation? Something new. And that something new should do what? Make something better, solve a problem. Our corporate executive calls it shifting to the white space. What do you think that means? Yeah. Thinking out of the box, moving out of the guidelines that everyone else has set. Looking at all the solutions out there and you see a hole, and that's where you move. And that's where you can get ahead of the game. And if you, as young researchers, are going to be thinking about innovation, in whatever field you go into, is figuring out what is everybody else doing, but what is nobody doing. And that's where I want to do my work. And that's how you have to think of the research. Throughout the world, it's dedicated to, we got what we call our clients. Now, I was working at university, and I don't call people clients, but they do. It's a nonprofit, and it goes throughout the world creating value. And one of the things that that you have to wrap your head around is that if it's valuable enough, that outweighs the cost. If it is valuable enough to solve a problem or to make things better, the value of it outweighs the cost. So when someone says, well, that's too expensive, I would never buy an iPad. But then there are those who would say, but I love it and the value is worth it and I'm going to buy it. So, part of it is figuring out value versus cost. Feel free to stop me and ask questions. This This is just describing a culture and a little bit of direction. So it deals with the value creation process. We have a lab called the Value Creation Lab where we make presentations and we do iterations of presentations. So I was involved in the Value Creation Lab last year. I had an idea and I had to present my idea to the same group 12 times. Each time I had to make it shorter until I got it down from 20 minutes to like 5 minutes. And they called it the 5-minute elevator speech. If you're trapped in an elevator with someone who has money, in 5 minutes, how can you convey your idea to this person to make them see that it is fantastic? These are the kind of things that SRI has done. What I will point out right away is, see this right here? Siri. SRI developed a Siri application for Apple. That is the voice of Siri at Apple. And there are other products on there that you probably use every single day. SRI researchers developed the first computer mouse. Without SRI, you probably wouldn't have that little thing that moves the pointer on your computer screen. SRI was also the recipient of the very first internet signal from the East Coast. So it was involved from the very beginning in developing the internet. It works on creating intelligent robots. You have a robotics lab, you work on robots. SRI is a world leader in robotics. And automation. Developing networks for the internet. Wireless communication. Homeland security. Real-time video processing. Penetrating radars. In fact, 80% of all the money that SRI gets comes from defense contracts. Most of the defense systems that we use in this country somehow SRI touches. That is why I have a security badge that nobody can get in unless you have a security badge. There is a gate that you go through, and everybody is building the block because of the criteria for security that the federal government requires. Aerospace, satellite communications, banking, natural language speech recognition, which right now the spin-off is the nuanced communications, but it also informed the development of Siri. Artificial muscles, biosciences, medical systems, economics, entertainment, information and computing. And the area that I work in is education. I have taught at almost every single grade level. I taught at the university. My area is working mostly with middle schools and high schools. And today, I'm going to risk a little bit because we've been developing some software and a mobile application and a device to help with collaboration. And it is the very first generation of some collaboration tools using mobile technology. You will be the first group ever to try it out. It came out of the programmer's hands. Zipped it out and sent it to me 2 weeks ago. We've just been doing debugging, and actually I'm not quite sure if things are going to work, but we are going to give it a whirl. But that's what researchers do. They take risks. They figure out we're going to try it. What better place to take a risk with you all who will completely understand that we're kind of to get us ready for this, I want to get your heads into this term cyber learning. Cyber learning and mobile devices. Is there anything that you've been doing in this program this summer about mobile devices and cyber learning? What have you been doing? What have you been doing? Okay, what programs are you doing? Hammersmith, okay. What else? What other kind of learning, cyber learning, mobile device tools, applications? Yeah. Okay, what kind of mobile devices?
Cell phone, tablet, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Big part of the things on Instagram, they all sort of share content.
Okay. Is social media a vehicle for cyber learning? Twitter, Facebook, those online learning communities. I'm on LinkedIn, ResearchGate. I don't do real, I like on Facebook, but I don't really on Twitter. Those are those opportunities for learning. We're going to talk about how. We're going to talk about how and how as researchers we answer that question. How do I know that I'm learning? How do I know that it's effective? So let's start with this. What is cyber learning? How would you define that? Yes. Okay. Learning on the internet. Could it be learning without the internet? Okay. Okay. Anything on computers that access the cyberspace sooner or later. Okay. We're here. What else?
Yes,
Okay. Okay. Online tutoring. Give me some other examples like that. How about online courses? Where you sign on, take a course. Have any of you taken online courses? Okay, tell me about online courses. Do you like them? Do you not like them? What's right with them? What's wrong with them? Easy to cheat on. Okay.
They weren't really adapted very well for online. They basically just a scan and text or page. I kind of like them because, for one, you can go to your own place, and a lot of times in the classroom, you can go to and use your own.
So, your own self-pacing made it work for you. Okay, what else? On-demand learning. I'm ready. Now is the time. I'm too tired now. I'm going to wait. Hold up for the business, right? Okay, right now.
I found it useful because sometimes it was worded in a way that you didn't understand it, or sometimes not a way to ask a question.
It says read this and then you're supposed to answer questions about it, okay? So if a relationship with someone, a mentor, someone you want to interact with and ask questions is important to you, it doesn't really provide that very well.
Also, I've had times that if I'm learning something online, I could, and there's like maybe a practice test, I could just do it all on practice test online, just use the format, but then I go write my paper and I do stuff, so.
Okay? online assessment format may not generalize to real world assessment formats. Okay? We got the other one. Yeah, great.
Just get to online courses because like, sometimes I have a question, but the teacher isn't allowed to answer my question there and then. Sometimes I have to wait like a day or two until she answers my questions.
Okay, so wait time, you got a question, you send the email, the response to the teacher, and it takes time to get it back, and that's not very satisfying. Okay. Other perspectives. Online courses are a big thing, and schools and states are investing billions of dollars in that. When you want to know what the research says, you should always ask that question to researchers. You should always ask that question. Research says that online courses, in general, are not more effective than live courses. They are only effective, and this here's the caveat, about 95% of all research has been conducted with university and adult learning learners, not your age. Okay? So the whole set of research needs to be done on online learning for students in middle school and high school as an option. But what they say is if you are going to be successful in an online course, you have to be organized, you have to be self-motivated, you have to have good regulation skills, self-regulation, good self-control, monitor your time. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was an adolescent, I didn't have any of those things. I delayed the last minute, and then I did my assignment, got it all done. I was going to be A, but I was waiting until the last 30, 40 minutes to do it. Same way for that. Because the school didn't really give me really hard tasks, it required me to spend weeks getting ready for it. The standards for my assignments were really low, so they were easy to do. He even told me he was taking an online course. He showed me the test, and he said, I have so much time to do the things I want to do because it takes me such a short amount of time to get these assignments done. And that's what the research is saying. It says also that the best online courses are blended. What does blended mean? Blended courses. Next, teacher and online experiences, where you have a teacher there, you have online, you go back and forth, they're accessible, there's a blend of those two. Okay, so that is a good example of those both current cyber learning experiences. Most of them are go to a site, read, there's very little interaction, you complete the assignments, you turn them in, and that's what online learning is really about today. The Gates Foundation is awarding major grant funds to people to develop new ways to design online courses. They say, let's get creative. We are not thinking out of the box. We've got to do a better job of creating online courses because they're not motivating, they're not engaging. And you study, answer the questions, pass the test, and 3 weeks later, what happens? You forgot it, right? Right. So, what are the genres of cyber learning? Now, online learning is one, social media is another. What is a genre? A type, a category. So, what other genres? When you think of genres or types of cyber learning? Yes. Okay, applications that you use on a mobile device or on a computer that does specific tasks or jobs, right? What other genres?
I guess educational games.
Games? You know, gaming has become a really big. Say it again, was it games?
Yes.
What kind of games?
Educate. I don't know. When I was in 7th grade, they had us do a bunch of math games. Where you have to do this, and you do this, and you have to do a math problem, and then you go on to the next level, and all that, that kind of deal.
Okay, so games specifically targeted at developing a certain kind of competency, knowledge, or skill, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Could just playing games be a type of cyber learning? Do you acquire and develop skills by just playing? What's some of the fun games you play? If I name one, the guy who gave me, so I'm not going to name it. So, what's a game you play? It's not Half-Life? What's that?
It's not like education.
Because no, it's not supposed to be. So like Mortal Kombat and Pac-Man. No, it's not going to be. I think it's neat, right? I did it. You did it. Those initial games that were designed for the computers, the Atari and those, were just games, like hit games, skill games, prediction games. Do those teach you things? They can. They can. Anybody seen Ender's Game? The movie? Yes. What did those games teach Ender? Yeah.
Organization of teammates and tactics or tactics.
Analysis, prediction, strategy, evaluating the resources of the enemy, evaluating your resources, deciding what next to do. Aren't those all really good skills to have? So gaming in cyber learning has become bigger and bigger. One of my colleagues developed a game called an app you can download that from the 19th Apple. It was called Reason Racing, and it's to teach some of the concepts of argumentation and collecting evidence. And there's this silly car, two cars, that race, and every time you get to a point, you have to answer a question about evidence in an argument. And every time you answer correctly, you can go farther. But the cars are really stupid the way around the track. But it's really the questions are kind of interesting. I got about 8% of them wrong. So that's not true. So I think. But people are beginning to move in that area, and they are developing some pretty low-level games, but testing the concept. And concept testing is a really important part of science. And you use really simple ideas to test the concept out. Mobile technologies and mobile devices. So I have some questions here. Why should mobile devices increase your learning? What are the different kinds of mobile devices that are available? Tablet, Kindle, phone. What are the new mobile devices that are just coming out? What? Google Glass? Yes. Personal devices you wear on your body, the glasses, the armbands, pardon? Yes. I don't know what that is, but what is that?
It's like a phone, but
Your phone, okay. Phone, why? You know, that might be Tracy. I was like, that's what I wanted. I hate carrying, have a watch and a wallet and a phone and put them all together, right? So we have different mobile devices. You're going to see more developed all the time. The most important feature of a mobile device is access to the web. Because access to the web expands the use of that mobile device exponentially. And a lot of the research and development is using the web and what we can do with the web to create learning experiences. And it's really hard because the programming for HTML and web environments isn't like the programming that you can do on a computer. In fact, what I'm going to work with you today is it was originally developed with a desktop computer because the functions, the graphic functions, the memory was not compatible with a mobile device. In fact, some of the leading researchers in the field try to develop graphic picture drawing kinds of applications that would work in an HTML or web environment, and it failed. It takes a bunch of memory, bunch of processing to work on a web environment. So workarounds have been created. What mobile devices do you use to learn? Okay, so you've already told me some of those. What types of mobile devices are in your future? You've already mentioned some of those. Do you know that the use of a mobile device improves your learning? You do? How do you know? Yeah?
You have access to the internet on your mobile device. You have instant access to it. If there's something you never know, you can look up. You don't have to look up at the computer, you just rest of the device.
So, a mobile device increases your learning because it gives you access to limitless amounts of information. Okay. How many of you use your mobile devices for learning, and how many of you use them for toys? Both, right? The goal of education is to help you learn how to use mobile devices to promote learning. To use social media, not to check in, hey, I'm at Five Guys Hamburgers, you want to come join me? Not to use it so much for those purposes, but to use mobile devices to increase learning. To use instant messaging about learning. To use mobile devices to collaborate. To use mobile devices that you can leverage to increase your knowledge. Which mobile devices do you use in learning? We already talked about that. How do you use them? When do you use mobile devices? When can you decide now's the time to use a mobile device to learn? You make that decision? Yeah. Okay, if you're doing homework and all of a sudden you need to know something, and so there's your smartphone or your tablet, or, and now with your laptop. I went to visit a school out in Connecticut. School for, we had 400 students, 150 students. 150 students and 50 teachers. All the kids had learning differences, learning disabilities. Every single kid in that school had a laptop, had a smartphone, had an iPad. And classes were small. The whole campus was completely wired. They used those devices all the time for learning. To organize, to find information, to give their assignments, to use speech to text recognition when they had trouble writing. That campus we call a technology-rich environment right for developing things that can be used in schools that didn't have that level of technology. And that's what we need. We need rich technology environments. We need schools to develop the supports so we can figure these things out. Let's get those. I have an activity now, and I'm not going to have you create a list. I'm just going to have you raise your hand and tell me. Some of you have already started generating this, but I want you to think of all the apps that you use. Which ones do you use? Which ones are best for learning? Okay, here. Quizlet? YouTube? Safari? Wikipedia? Some people would argue with that, I don't know now. You go, but I use it. Dictionary apps? QuizUp? Edmodo? What? Google Translate? Lumosity? Slater? Good Notes? What is it? Okay. I really try to collect actions, but I'm not 100% good at it. That's it. Coursera? I do University, okay? Khan Academy? iBooks? The federal government just funded a large study to evaluate the effects of the Khan Academy on learning. Whether the Khan Academy really does improve learning or not. Now, have you seen those? The lingo? In grade? Educate? Excel math? Yeah. Facebook? Google Drive? Yeah. What is it? Reddit? More? You've seen Poplets. You've ever heard of Poplets? There are a whole set of apps that let you visually organize information and for you to specify the relationship between sets of information. Poplets are bubbles, and then you draw a line, and then on the line you say, X is an example of Y. These things are all, and then a higher order bubble to categorize information. So graphically organize, sort, conceptually map information. Some collaborative tasks for students involve read this section of your text and draw a map of it. What are the 5 big concepts? What are the details and examples? How do they connect? What leads to this? What leads to that? Causal reasoning, comparative reasoning, argumentation, question exploration, mapping. There's a whole set of apps that you might want to look for that help organize information to communicate relationships between different chunks of information. So those are kind of apps. The biggest genre of apps that is being developed today is apps for collaboration. To collaborate. Now, why do you think that is? Yeah. Put ideas together. Yeah. I would like that. What is the purpose of collaboration? Why do we collaborate? So we can learn from each other. Okay, tell me. There are certain words. You see, I may have these coming here. This word called co-construction. What does co-construction mean in learning? And it's actually used that often, but it's starting to be used. Yeah, working together to make something. Teacher instruction has often been described as sage on stage, as opposed to guide on the side. Teacher instruction has been described as teacher lecture, students sit and get. How do you feel about those approaches? Sit and get, sage on stage, teacher lecture you can see pretty negative response to most of that. The whole idea is that that's a classical model where teachers are the owners of the knowledge and they're going to impart it to you. Co-construction captures the idea that learning and knowledge is not held within a person, but is co-created by a dialogue between people who have different sets of information. So, co-construction is one idea. This presentation I made a couple of weeks ago at the University of Kansas for a couple hundred professional developers who are working with schools. My son Peter helped me present it with some software. And the title was Beyond Co-Construction, Using Collaborative Discourse for Building Understanding and Collective Intelligence. Now, what does that title mean to you? That's all you saw. What did you think? What would you think that session was going to be about?
using, so you're using a group to understand the group.
Okay? We've already got the idea down that we don't understand and deliver. That really we need to be co-constructing information, building it together. But collaborative discourse, what does the word discourse mean? Discussion. Discourse is the language that we use to talk about information in respectful ways that build on one another, that use things like, I like what you did there, can I add something to that? Would you mind if I move this over here? What would happen? The language of collaboration is a respectful language of how we honor someone else's ideas, talk about it, and give other information or suggestions, and the other people adopt it, change it, modify it, question about it, ask questions about it, so that in the end, it is a positive experience. The discourse, the language, is a win-win conversation. All right? I hope that in your teams and the work you're doing, the collaborative discourse does that, accomplishes that. The idea of respecting knowledge and contributions. To create, for building understanding, build more understanding of the people who are having this collaborative discourse. And what is collective intelligence? Bet you can guess that. Say it again. Knowledge of a group or population. It is the knowledge generated by a group through collaborative discourse in which the ideas of one are exponentially increased because multiple people are contributing to it for collective intelligence. Here's the definition of it by researchers who are doing work on it. Intelligence is defined, I have to read this, I'm not supposed to read over this, but I have to. Intelligence is defined as the general ability of the group, in your groups that you're working in, or any of your projects, the general ability of your group to perform a wide variety of tasks. It is a property of the group itself. So collective intelligence, you do not have it if you leave the group. As soon as you leave the group, collective intelligence goes away. It's owned by the group, not just the individuals. Argumentation could potentially increase abilities associated with dialogue and collaborative learning that have been associated with collective intelligence. Now think about argumentation. What do you have to do when you make an argument? Yes, it's about arguing about information. It's about what do you do with that information? Okay, what does an argument start? What does an argument start? Claims. There you go. An argument always starts with a claim. You have a problem, and you say, I claim that this is the source of the problem, this is what we have to do. You claim not to make some other kind of proposition. I think this is what's happening. You each go off, you each collect evidence, and then part of the argumentation process, collecting evidence, is you evaluate the quality of the evidence. You evaluate the reasoning that you use to tie the evidence together and collect more evidence. And then you either accept or reject the claim. You consider the other person's position in terms of where does it fit with yours in terms of making that argument. And a group of people working together can create an argument, can evaluate an argument, and the result of that dynamic exchange is called collective intelligence. Some of the things that we know affect it. Is social skills, how we have social exchanges, what's called the emotional state, the emotional readiness. and some strategies for just doing the argument. So there's a lot of, it's really complicated, there's a lot of things that are involved. Now what I'm going to do, this is my slide on social media. This is how many ways social media is exploding in our world, right? One of it doesn't allow us to get up, move, and collaborate. So the first thing we have to do is, I want you to get up, move, and I want you to get in your teams. And if you have to stand and around in circles,
Yeah, so just back half is the first here. This is your break.
And you can see the work that your representative was doing to represent your group, and you could be sending them instant messages saying, I disagree, I would like this like that. Until for 147, 44 students, you could create collectively one list of criteria for the best app that you would like to see developed. The shared knowledge, the negotiation, the position, the argumentation, the rationales, the evidence, the train of logic, the reasoning, to all pull together to create a shared understanding of something. Now, this is the very first iteration of line of research on how do you get collaboration of ideas and integration, and what's the process for doing that. You will be the first group of students who've ever done anything like this, and you can see the kind of challenges, the directions, where to go, the different types of mobile devices. And many schools don't have the same bandwidth abilities that Stanford University. You know that when you buy internet services at home, what are the two things that what's the one most important thing you want when you want to see a movie? Download speed. But when you want to upload, usually their networks and fiber optics aren't built for fast upload speeds, sending your information to the cloud. And a lot of schools aren't prepared for that. And so bandwidth for educational purposes, where teachers are uploading courses, students are uploading information back and forth, is going to require fiber optics that have both upload and download speeds that will handle the kind of collaboration that you all just participate in. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about research. I want you to think about the dilemma the researchers have, the questions they have, the practical problems, the infrastructure, the system that these things have to work in, why things fail, why some innovations take off, why other innovations fall flat on their face, as you go through the rest of your experiences here at this program. That concludes my presentation, and I want to thank you so much for enduring our little beta test.
Okay, ready? Let's really thank Dr. Lenz. Sure.